Hello everybody, and I thought that today would finally be the day that I explain my hyperfixation with Dungeons and Dragons. Admittedly though, I've only played D&D for about a year. I'm in 3 campaigns right now, one of them called Monster of the Week that hasn't started yet, Unity and Sin, which is a Fallout game, and The Hunter's Mark, which is a original D&D game. Why am I suddenly bringing this up to the YouTube channel? Well, the reason being, if you've seen my TikToks, you'd know that I've been releasing a bunch, and I mean a bunch of D&D content, and I realized that some of you guys wanted to know more about this character, specifically Caro, so this is what this video is going to be about. Let me go ahead and start off with the Hunter's Mark. And the character that I'm drawing on screen right now is going to be Jared Viewval. I'm not sure if I said it right, I probably butchered it, but just bear with me. Jared Viewval is a changeling bard who's pretty much been our cleric of the group, pretty much lifting us up every single time we needed him to, and is the designated comfort gay dad. Of course, every character has to have its trauma, so Jared was pretty much living the absolute best life until he met his ex-girlfriend. Crazy ex-girlfriend, mind you. Jared pretty much tried to break up with this ex-girlfriend, but she didn't take it so nice, and pretty much tried to suffocate him with vines. Fortunately enough, I believe it was the dad that managed to find him and rescue him before he suffocated, but this ultimately resulted in the ex-girlfriend being banned from their hometown. Jared, after a bit of necessary time to cope with what happened, decided to move out of there though and start adventuring. Like the others, they pretty much met at a very inconvenient time. Pretty much they were going to try and go against a band of hobgoblins, but unfortunately they met some other jerk named Nilbog that forced them to stay together. I'll be explaining that later. Now, there's another guy named Lorelei. I don't remember the last name, but they are a half-orc monk who's insanely strong, by the way, but also traumatized, and the youngest of the group. Lorelei lived with his parents for a time, traveling. His dad was an alchemist, and the mother was an orc, so of course, you know, we always have questions about that, but we don't get into that. Anyways, they lived together happily for some time until Lorelei and their parents got ambushed by a group of cultists. Who would you guess the cultists are? The cultists of Orcus. But fortunately enough, Lorelei, as he was about to get killed, was spared by this guy and forced to start wandering on his own. Unfortunately, after some time of wandering on his own, the cultists found him again and almost killed him until his mentor, I don't remember the mentor's name, Thazar, I'm sorry, I don't remember names right, but this mentor found Lorelei, took him in, and managed to fend off the cultists all on his own. Pretty much it was a dad and son dynamic, him teaching how to fight, be a monk, and his only warning to Lorelei was do not join the Iron Shadow. Unfortunately, it got to a point that Lorelei and the mentor were ambushed by some cultists, the same cultists, by the way, or more so, the same cultists that worship Orcus, and it got to a point that they got into an argument over this, and Lorelei was like, you know what, he doesn't trust me, I'm gonna go adventure on my own. And that's pretty much what led Lorelei to the party. Lorelei is a little bit impulsive and reckless, so his relationship with the party is kind of strained, but not so much to the point that they argue with each other constantly. It's just more so that he's the naive one of the group, but he's still pretty strong. Of course, the only exception is with my character Caro, who I'll be explaining later. They do not like each other too much. Caro's currently in the process of trying to be nicer to them, but she's not too fond of Lorelei's entire personality, basically who he is, but she's trying. It's even as bad as the fact that she will sometimes backhand him or hit him with her staff, so you know that boy has bruises. And now we have Kerr, the Gnoll Paladin. He's pretty much the tank of the party and extremely reliable, especially on the fact that we redeemed him, Because the way that we found him, he was in the middle of a battlefield. The rest of his, I believe they're called, packs? Yeah, I would have to assume they're called packs. The rest of his pack was killed, and he had just fended off the rest of the hobgoblins, I believe. And Lorelai and Jared came across him while Carol was riding on boat to, I think it was a town called Boatwright, or maybe Sangal. But they found him, and he was almost dead until they tried to soothe him, saying, "We're here to help, we're not here to hurt you." And he seemed hesitant at first to trust them, but eventually did. And this is where their friendship started to blossom. Funnily enough, whenever Carol finally saw Kerr, she was immediately alarmed, because this is a big hyena, man. These guys are known to be murderers. These guys are known to be pillagers, but, you know, Jared and Lorelai said, "No, you can trust him. He's fine. We've gotten to know him. He's a friend." And Caro, of course, being reluctant, decided to trust him anyway, though begrudgingly. And now, moving on to Caro, my character. Caro is a warlock owlin, and unfortunately, her story isn't happy at all. Caro started off with both her mom and dad pretty much living the absolute life, even having a girlfriend until the age of 18 whenever she asked them to marry her. But everything started to fall apart whenever her mother passed away. The way that Caro's mother passed away was really a shame, because in the town that they lived in, they were ambushed by a band of orcs, and as her mother was trying to defend her, trying to get an orc to let go of Caro, her mother pretty much went crazy mom style, tried to fight the orc back, but only to be thrown against one of the stone walls of their church and immediately killed upon impact. Caro's dad was devastated, Caro was devastated, even Betty, her wife, was devastated. And that was in the moment, or like in between the moment of Caro's proposal and the date of the marriage was supposed to happen, so her mom didn't even get to see the wedding. But of course, life went on, and they went on to live a pretty relatively normal life until Caro turned 18. For the majority of Caro's life, she helped as an acolyte at the church, not really knowing what deity the church worshipped, but still continued to do so since her mom and dad decided, "Oh, that's a great idea, you should totally do that." And of course, being an absolute mama's girl, she decided to go ahead and work for the church. This came back with some really bad consequences, since the father told Caro, "Our God is telling me that you are not being loyal to the church, and so he's gave me an ultimatum for you. It's either you kill your wife, or your father is banished from the town. You have to choose." Caro was immediately begging for some other way, some other option, but he's not budging until Caro takes the dagger that she was given and starts walking home. In this moment, she's trying to think of other ways to get around it, maybe to take her wife, to take her dad, and run out of the church, but I'm not entirely sure. I don't remember, but I don't even think that was an option, since the security of the town was pretty big and bad. Eventually, Caro got to her house. Her wife was asking how her day was, how everything went, but she immediately noticed that something was wrong with Caro. She wasn't all there, more so that she was dripping in sweat and almost shaking. As Betty's trying to get some info out of her, see what happened, Caro looks up at her and says, "I really don't want to do this to you." And as they keep going back and forth, Betty trying to ask, what's going on? You're not telling me anything. I can help you. Caro pulls out the dagger, and unfortunately, I think you guys know what happens. After the deed is done, Caro starts packing her things in a panic, and not even without telling her dad, just flees from the town, never looking back, flying through a raging storm in the night. Caro spent a day in a cave trying to gather exactly what happened just a few hours prior, until she decides to find the strength and go to a nearby town that her father, as a merchant, went to sell his items. In this town, a shopkeeper that Caro's dad knew fairly well as the shopkeeper knowing Caro fairly well, finds her covered in dried blood and brings her in trying to figure out what happened, but Caro's unresponsive. Even after a long while, Caro still failed to respond to the shopkeeper, just helping him tend to the store and manage it. That's all she really did for a couple months. Though, at some point, she had to break out of it, and what's a good way other than a robbery? As she rushes downstairs, she sees a scene of the shopkeeper being threatened by a couple of burglars, and seeing the predicament that they're in, she begins to panic, and in this moment of panic, her abilities come to life. Almost like red, crackling electricity, it starts to form around her hands before, without a second thought, she takes out one of the burglars, and the rest of the burglars immediately rush out of the store, realizing they were in danger. This is the moment that Caro realizes that the sacrifice wasn't just a sacrifice, but a pact with the patron of Orcus. The shopkeeper immediately realizes that Caro has some pretty useful abilities, and so he tells Caro to enter a side room that she didn't even know existed until then, and introduce her to the agents of the Volstrucker. There's some other details in her lore that I can't explain right now since the party members or my friends that are in this campaign watch my videos, so maybe whenever that stuff finally comes up I'll tell you guys, but for now that's gonna be on the hush hush and low. I thought it would be appropriate that after so long of rambling about Caro and the rest of the campaign, it was about time that I shared a lot of D&D content since, again, it is one of my biggest passions as of recently, and my boyfriend can definitely vouch for that. But I wanted to start posting D&D because I wanted to make a way to, I guess, celebrate the fact that we've had a year together in this campaign, and what better of a way than to make a video rambling about these characters. I do apologize for the fact that I can't share too much on the rest of my party members because, again, those are their backstories. I can only share as much as I remember, and my time is kind of limited right now, so I'll just share what I can, and I'll post more info in another video if you guys wish to hear about it. Just leave a comment in the comment section below telling me that you'd like to hear more about D&D, maybe seeing some of my animated stuff, and I'll see if I'll be able to make more content on it. I appreciate you guys for being here and sticking out all the way through the video just to listen to me rambling about D&D and how much I appreciate my friends, so I'm gonna call it quits here and say I hope you guys have a good one, and I will see you in another video. Bye-bye!